She found a Lakota warrior bleeding in the canyon. 2 nights later, the Apache girl was gone. Blood on red stone, the canyon walls rose like ancient sentinels against the dying light of day, their red sandstone faces carved by countless seasons of wind and rain. Ayana moved silently through the narrow passage, her moccasined feet finding purchase on the rocky ground with the practiced ease of one born to this harsh land. The Apache girl carried a water-gourd and gathering basket, having ventured far from her people's camp in search of the sacred blue corn that grew wild in these hidden places. At 17 summers, Ayana possessed the keen instincts of a desert predator in the gentle heart of a healer. Her grandmother, Itza, had taught her the old ways which plants could mend bones, which roots could draw poison from wounds, and which songs could call the spirits to aid the sick. Today she sought not only corn, but also the rare ghost flower that bloomed only in the deepest shadows of the canyon, its petals holding power to heal even the gravest injuries. The scent reached her first copper and salt, the unmistakable smell of fresh blood. Ayana froze, every sense alert. In these troubled times, with the blue coats pushing ever westward and tensions rising between the tribes, blood in the canyon could mean many things, none of them good. She crept forward, following the scent around the bend in the narrow passage. There, sprawled against the base of the canyon wall like a broken doll, lay a man, even unconscious and covered in blood. She could see he was not Apache. His hair, black as a moonless night, was braided with eagle feathers and small bones in the Lakota fashion. War paint, now smeared and faded, marked his high cheekbones. A magnificent war shirt, decorated with intricate beadwork and porcupine quills, was torn and soaked with blood from a deep gash across his chest. Ayana's first instinct was to flee. The Lakota were not enemies of her people, but neither were they friends. They were strangers from the northern plains, as foreign to her desert world as the white soldiers who built their forts and strung their talking wires across the sacred land. Yet as she watched, the warrior's chest rose and fell in the shallow rhythm of one close to death, and her healer's heart would not let her turn away. She approached cautiously, her hand resting on the bone knife at her belt. The warrior appeared to be alone, no horse, no weapons visibly save for a broken lance lying nearby. His face, though painted for war, was young, perhaps only a few summers older than herself. A haggard wound ran from his left shoulder across his chest, deep enough that she could see the white gleam of rib beneath. Other cuts and bruises marked his arms and face, telling the story of a fierce battle. Kneeling beside him, Ayana placed her hand gently on his forehead. His skin burned with fever, and she could feel the rapid flutter of his pulse beneath her fingers. Without conscious thought, she began to sing softly, one of the healing songs her grandmother had taught her, calling upon the spirits of the canyon to lend their strength. The warrior's eyes snapped open at the sound of her voice. They were the color of storm clouds, gray-green, and fierce even in his weakened state. His hand moved instinctively toward where his weapons should have been, but found only empty air. For a moment, they stared at each other, the Apache girl and the Lakota warrior, two souls from different worlds meeting in this place of red stone and shadow. Easy, Ayana whispered in her own tongue, then switched to the trade language that most plains tribes knew. I mean no harm. You are badly hurt. The warrior tried to speak, but only a harsh whisper emerged. His eyes never left her face, searching for signs of treachery or threat. Finding none, he seemed to relax slightly, though his body remained coiled with the tension of a wounded predator. Water, he managed to laugh. Ayana lifted her gourd to his lips, supporting his head as he drank. The water was cool and sweet, drawn from a hidden spring deep in the canyon. As he drank, she studied his wounds with a healer's eye. The chest wound was the most serious, but it had missed his heart and lungs by a hand's width. With proper care, he might live. Who did this to you? She asked as he finished drinking. Blue coats, he whispered, his voice gaining strength. Patrol found our hunting party. My brothers. His eyes closed in pain that had nothing to do with his wounds. Ayana understood. The soldiers had been growing bolder, venturing farther from their forts, attacking any native they encountered regardless of tribe or intention. Too many of her own people had fallen to their guns and sabers. "How did you come to be here?" she asked. Rode hard. Horse fell at canyon mouth, crawled. He gestured weakly toward the passage she had come through. The nearest cavalry fort was 2 days' ride to the east. That he had made it this far with such wounds spoke of incredible strength and determination. But it also meant the soldiers might still be tracking him. Ayana made her decision quickly, knowing that her grandmother would approve. "I will help you," she said, "but we cannot stay here." "Can you walk?" The warrior, she still did not know his name, struggled to sit up. Fresh blood seeped through his washer, and his face went pale with the effort. I will try. "What are you called?" she asked, as she helped support his weight. "Lakota," he replied through gritted teeth. "It means friend to all." Despite their dire situation, Ayana almost smiled. "I am Ayana. It means eternal blossom." "Fitting," Lakota said, his storm-gray eyes meeting hers. "You bloom in this place of death." Together, they began the slow, painful journey deeper into the canyon, toward a hidden cave. Ayana knew of where the spirits were strong and healing could take place. Behind them, the shadows lengthened as night approached, and somewhere in the distance, the sound of hoofbeats echoed off the canyon walls. The cave lay hidden behind a curtain of hanging vines and fallen rocks, invisible to any who did not know its secret. Ayana discovered it as a child, following a wounded deer that had seemed to vanish into the canyon wall itself. Inside, the space opened into a natural chamber large enough for several people, with a small pool of spring water at its center and smoke holes that led to the surface far above. Getting Lakota to the cave had taken most of the night. The Lakota warrior's strength had ebbed and flowed like the tide, sometimes walking on his own, other times leaning heavily on Ayana's slight frame. Twice they had been forced to hide among the rocks as the sound of horses and voices echoed through the canyon, soldiers searching for their quarry. Now, as dawn light filtered through the smoke holes above, Ayana worked to save the warrior's life. She had stripped away his bloodied war shirt and cleaned his wounds with water from the sacred pool. The chest wound was worse than she had initially thought, deep and ragged, as if made by a saber thrust that had been twisted as it was withdrawn. "This will hurt," she warned, as she prepared a poultice of healing herbs she had gathered from her basket. Lakota, who had been drifting in and out of consciousness, opened his eyes and nodded. "Pain is an old friend," he whispered. "Do what you must." As Ayana worked, pressing the herbal mixture into his wounds and binding them with strips torn from her own clothing, Lakota told her his story. He and his younger brother, Chayton, had been part of a small hunting party, seeking elk in the foothills when the cavalry patrol had found them. The soldiers had attacked without warning, without provocation. "Chayton was only 16 summers," Lakota said, his voice thick with grief. "He had just earned his first eagle feather. He died trying to protect the others." Ayana's hands stilled for a moment. She had lost her own brother to the Blue Coats 3 winters past, cut down while hunting rabbits near their winter camp. The pain in Lakota's voice was one she knew well. "The spirits will guide him to the happy hunting grounds," she said softly. "His courage will be remembered, will it?" Lakota's eyes were bright with fever and unshed tears. "Who will remember when we are all gone? When the last of the free tribes are penned up on the white man's reservations like cattle?" Ayana had no answer for that. Her own people spoke in whispers of the same fate, of the inevitable day when they too would be forced to abandon their ancestral lands. But for now, there was only this moment, this cave, this wounded warrior who needed her help. She continued her work, cleaning and dressing his other wounds, checking for signs of infection. As she worked, she sang the healing songs her grandmother had taught her, calling upon the spirits of earth and water, wind and fire to lend their power to her efforts. Lakota listened to her singing with wonder. "Your voice, he said when she paused. It is like water over stones, like wind through prairie grass. I have never heard such beauty. Ayana felt heat rise in her cheeks. It is not my voice that heals, but the songs themselves. They are older than memory, passed down from grandmother to granddaughter since the world was young. Teach me, Lakota said suddenly. If I am to die in this place, let me die knowing something beautiful. You will not die, Ayana said firmly. I will not allow it. She meant it. Something about this Lakota warrior had touched her heart in a way she did not fully understand. Perhaps it was his courage, the way he had fought through pain and exhaustion to reach safety. Perhaps it was the gentleness she saw in his storm-gray eyes, so at odds with his fierce appearance. Or perhaps it was simply that they were both young people caught in a world that seemed determined to destroy everything they held dear. For 3 days, Ayana tended to Lakota in the hidden cave. She brought fresh water from the pool, gathered healing plants from the canyon walls, and kept watch for any sign of pursuing soldiers. Slowly, his wounds began to heal, and his fever broke on the second night. As his strength returned, they talked. Lakota told her of the great plains where he had been born, of buffalo herds that stretched from horizon to horizon, of his people's sacred ceremonies and ancient tradition. In return, Ayana shared the lore of the desert, the secret places where water could be found, the signs that told of coming storms or the movements of game. Your people and mine, Lakota said on the third evening, as they shared a meal of roasted rabbit and wild onions. We are not so different. We both love the land, both honor the spirits, both fight to remain free. Yet we have never been allies. Ayana observed. The plains tribes and the desert people have always kept to their own territories. Perhaps that was a mistake, Lakota said thoughtfully. Perhaps if we had stood together from the beginning, the blue coats would not have found us so easy to defeat one by one. It was a dangerous thought, one that could be seen as treason by both their peoples. Yet Ayana found herself nodding in agreement. How many warriors had died fighting alone, when they might have lived fighting together? On the fourth morning, Lakota was strong enough to stand and walk without assistance. His wounds, while still tender, had closed cleanly and showed no signs of infection. It was time for him to go. Where will you travel? Ayana asked as she helped him into a spare shirt she had brought from her people's camp. North, he said. Back to my people, if any still live free. And you? Will you return to your tribe? Ayana hesitated. She had been gone for 4 days now, far longer than any gathering expedition should take. Her people would be worried, perhaps even searching for her. Yet the thought of returning to the familiar patterns of camp life, of pretending that nothing had changed, filled her with an odd reluctance. Yes, she said finally, I must. They stood, facing each other in the cave entrance, the morning sun painting the canyon walls in shades of gold and crimson. For a moment, neither spoke, both aware that this parting might be forever. I owe you my life, Lakota said at last. Among my people, such a debt can never be repaid. You owe me nothing, Ayana replied. What I did freely. Lakota reached into his medicine pouch and withdrew a small object, a piece of carved bone in the shape of a wolf, strung on a leather core. This was my brother's, he said. A carved itself. I want you to have it. Ayana accepted the gift with reverence, understanding its significance. I will treasure it always. If ever you have need, Lakota said, send word to the Lakota. Ask for Lakota, son of Chief Standing Bear. I will come, and if you ever return to this canyon, Ayana replied, look for the blue corn that grows in the hidden places. I will know you have come. They parted then, Lakota heading north toward the canyon mouth and his long journey home. Ayana turning south toward her people's camp. Neither looked back, though both wanted to, but the desert keeps its secrets, and the canyon walls had witnessed their meeting. In 2 days' time, those same walls would witness something else entirely. And look, the most striking part is still to come. But if this has made sense to you so far, like the video and send it to someone who needs to hear this. Ayana returned to her people's camp as the sun reached its zenith, her gathering basket filled with blue corn and medicinal plants to explain her long absence. The Apache camp nestled in a hidden valley, protected by high mesas and accessible only through narrow, easily defended passes. Isidio, Tenedo, easily defended passes. Wickiups, made of brush and hide, dotted the valley floor, and cook fires sent thin streams of smoke into the clear desert air. Her grandmother, Itza, was waiting for her at the edge of camp. The old woman's weathered face showed relief, but her dark eyes held questions that would need answering. "Granddaughter," Itza said, embracing Ayana warmly, "we had begun to fear the worst. 4 days is too long for gathering, even in the far canyons. Forgive me, grandmother." Ayana replied, lowering her eyes respectively. "I found a rich patch of blue corn and lost track of time. And see, I found ghost flowers as well." She showed the precious white blooms she had indeed gathered during her journey back. Itza examined the flowers with approval, but her gaze lingered on her granddaughter's face. "You look different, child." Changed. What happened in the canyon? Before Ayana could answer, a commotion arose from the center of camp. Warriors were gathering around someone, a rider who had just arrived with news. Ayana and her grandmother hurried to join the crowd. The messenger was Nalnis, a young warrior from a neighboring band. His horse was lathered with sweat, and his face was grim with bad tidings. "The blue coats are moving," he announced to the assembled people. 3 days ago, a cavalry patrol attacked a Lakota hunting party in the eastern canyons. They killed all but one, who escaped wounded. Now the soldiers search everywhere, claiming the Lakota were raiders who must be found and punished. Ayana's blood turned to ice. Lakota had made it out of the canyon, but now the entire region was being scoured by troops, looking for him. "More troubling still," Nalnis continued. "The soldiers have made camp at Willow Springs, only half a day's ride from here. They question all travelers, search every canyon. It is said they have Apache scouts with them, men who have sold their souls to the white man for silver coins." Chief Cochise, Ayana's uncle and leader of their band, stepped forward. He was a man of middle years, his face marked by the scars of many battles, his presence commanding respect from all who knew him. "How many soldiers?" he asked. "Perhaps 50, Nalnis replied, "led by a captain called Morrison. They have good horses and new rifles, and they seem to know our country well, too well for strangers." Murmurs of consent rippled through the crowd. If the soldiers had Apache guides, it meant some of their own people had betrayed them. It also meant their hidden valley might not remain hidden much longer. "We must move the camp," declared Geronimo, Cochise's war leader and Ayana's cousin. "Tonight, under cover of darkness, take only what we can carry quickly." "Where can we go?" asked one of the women. "Every canyon, every waterhole will be watched." As the debate continued, Ayana felt the weight of Lakota's bone carving against her chest, hidden beneath her shirt. She alone knew the truth, that the Lakota raider the soldiers sought was no raider at all, but a young man who had lost his brother to an unprovoked attack. She also knew that if he were captured, he would be hanged or shot without trial. But more troubling still was the growing certainty that someone had betrayed not just the location of Lakota's hunting party, but possibly her own people as well. The soldiers' knowledge of Apache territory was too precise, their movements too confident. That evening, as the camp prepared to move, Ayana sought out her grandmother's counsel. They sat together outside Itza's wickiup, speaking in low voices while the rest of the people packed their belongings. Grandmother Ayana began carefully. "What would you do if you knew a secret that could save an innocent life, but telling it might endanger our people?" Itza studied her granddaughter's face in the firelight. "You speak in riddles, child. What secret do you carry?" Ayana hesitated, then made her decision. In halting words, she told her grandmother about finding Lakota, about healing him in the hidden cave, about his story of the unprovoked attack on his hunting party. Itza listened without interruption, her expression growing more troubled with each word. When Ayana finished, the old woman was silent for a long moment. "You did right to help him," she said finally. "The spirits would have cursed you for leaving a wounded man to die, regardless of his tribe. But now you carry a burden that is heavier than you know." "What do you mean?" "Think, granddaughter. How did the soldiers know where to find this Lakota hunting party? How do they know our country so well? And why do they search us desperately for one wounded warrior when they already have their victory?" The implications hit Ayana like a physical blow. "You think they were led to the hunting party deliberately?" "I think," Itza said slowly, "that someone wanted those Lakota dead for reasons that have nothing to do with protecting white settlers. And I think that same someone now wants this Dakota silenced before he can tell what really happened. But who would do such a thing? And why?" Before Itza could answer, shouts erupted from the camp's perimeter. Warriors ran toward the sound, weapons in hand. In the distance, the glow of torches could be seen approaching through the main pass. "Soldiers!" someone cried. "They've found us!" The camp exploded into controlled chaos as people grabbed essential belongings and headed for the escape routes that led deeper into the Mesa country. But even as they fled, Ayana realized with growing horror that their hidden valley had been betrayed. Someone among their own people had sold them to the Bluecoats. As she ran through the darkness with her grandmother and the other women and children, Ayana clutched Dakota's bone carving and made a silent vow. Somehow, she would uncover the truth behind the betrayal. And somehow, she would find a way to warn the Lakota warrior that his enemies were closer than he knew. Behind them, the soldiers poured into the abandoned camp, their torches turning the night into a hellscape of fire and shadow. Captain Morrison's voice could be heard shouting orders, demanding to know where the Apache had gone and where they might be hiding the wounded Lakota. But the desert had already swallowed the fleeing people, and by dawn there would be no trace of their passage, save for the cold ashes of their cook fires, and the empty wickiups standing like ghosts in the morning light. 2 days after the attack on their camp, Ayana crouched behind a boulder on a high ridge, watching the soldiers search the canyon below. Her people had scattered into the deep desert, following ancient trails known only to the Apache. They would regroup at a sacred place called the Whispering Rocks, but that was still 2 days' journey through some of the harshest country in the territory. Ayana had volunteered to stay behind and watch the soldiers' movements, to learn their plans and discover, if possible, the identity of their Apache guide. What she had learned filled her with rage and sorrow in equal measure. The traitor was Naal Nish, the same young warrior who had brought news of the cavalry patrol. From her hiding place, she had watched him meet with Captain Morrison, had seen him point toward the various canyons where Apache bands might be hiding. He wore a blue cavalry shirt beneath his traditional clothing, and silver coins clinked in a pouch at his belt. But worse than the betrayal itself was what she had overheard of their conversation. Nalnis had not simply sold information about Apache camps. He had deliberately led the cavalry to Dakota's hunting party, knowing they would be slaughtered. The reason was as old as humanity itself: jealousy and greed. Nalnis had been courting a Lakota woman named Winona during the last great gathering of tribes. When she had chosen Dakota's brother Chaiton instead, Nalnis had sworn revenge. He had tracked the hunting party for days, then led the soldiers to them, ensuring that Chaiton would die and Winona would be left alone and grieving. Now he hunted Dakota with the same deadly persistence, determined to eliminate the last witness to his treachery. As Ayana watched, a new group of riders approached the soldiers' camp. Her heart nearly stopped when she recognized the lead rider Dakota, but not as she had last seen him. Gone was the wounded warrior she had nursed back to health. In his place rode the figure of terrible vengeance, his face painted for war, his weapons gleaming in the afternoon sun. He was not alone. Behind him rode a dozen Lakota warriors, all painted for battle, all armed with rifles as well as traditional weapons. Somehow, Dakota had not only reached his people, but had convinced them to ride south with him. perhaps to rescue him from his pursuers, perhaps to exact revenge for his brother's death. The two forces saw each other at the same moment. Captain Morrison shouted orders as his soldiers scrambled for their weapons. The Lakota warriors spread out in a classic plains fighting formation, using the terrain to their advantage. And caught between them, Nalnis looked around desperately, realizing that his treachery was about to be exposed. The battle erupted with the sudden violence of a desert thunderstorm. Rifle fire echoed off the canyon walls as the two forces engaged. The soldiers had superior numbers and firepower, but the Lakota had the advantage of mobility and intimate knowledge of warfare on horseback. Ayanna watched in fascination and horror as Takoda rode straight toward the center of the cavalry formation, seemingly oblivious to the bullets whining around him. His target was clear, Nalnish, who was trying to escape in the confusion of battle. The Apache traitor saw Takoda coming and wheeled his horse to flee, but the Lakota warrior was faster. With a cry that seemed to shake the very stones of the canyon, Takoda leaped from his horse onto Nalnish, bearing both of them to the ground. The two men rolled in the dust, fighting with knives in bare hands. Nalnish was skilled and desperate, but Takoda fought with the fury of a man avenging his murdered brother. The outcome was never in doubt. When Takoda rose from the struggle, Nalnish lay still in the red dust. His treachery ended forever. But the victory was costly. Takoda swayed on his feet, fresh blood seeping through his shirt where his wounds had reopened in the fight. The battle around them was turning against the Lakota. Despite their courage and skill, they were outnumbered and outgunned. One by one, the warriors were falling to the soldiers' rifles. Takoda looked around desperately, seeing his friends and kinsmen dying for his sake. It was then that Ayanna made her decision. Rising from her hiding place, she cupped her hands around her mouth and gave the cry of a canyon hawk, a signal known to every Apache warrior. From hidden positions all around the canyon, her people's warriors rose like spirits from the stone itself. Chief Cochise had not fled as far as the soldiers believed. He had positioned his warriors in the rocks above the canyon, waiting to see what would develop. Now, at his niece's signal, they struck with all the fury of the desert wind. Caught between the Lakota below and the Apache above, the cavalry formation collapsed. Captain Morrison tried to rally his men, but the crossfire was too intense. Within minutes, the soldiers were in full retreat, leaving their dead and wounded behind. As the dust settled, Ayanna climbed down from her perch to find Takoda kneeling beside the body of a fallen Lakota warrior, an older man with gray-streaked braids and the bearing of a chief. "My father," Takoda said simply as she approached. "He came to find me, to bring me home. Now he will ride the spirit trail with my brother." Ayanna knelt beside him, her heart breaking for his loss. He died with honor, fighting for his son. The spirits will welcome him. Takoda looked up at her, his storm-gray eyes bright with unshed tears. "You saved us. Your people saved us." "Why?" "Because it was right," Ayanna replied. "Because the real enemy is not between our tribes, but stands against all free peoples." Chief Cochise approached, his warriors gathering around him. The Apache leader studied Takoda with the measuring gaze of one warrior evaluating another. "You fight well, Lakota," he said in the trade language. "Your courage honors your people, as does your niece's wisdom honor yours," Takoda replied, struggling to his feet. "She saved my life twice, once with her healing, and now with her courage." Cochise looked between them, seeing something in their faces that made him nod slowly. "The old ways are ending," he said. "Perhaps it is time for new alliances, new paths." "My people will remember this day," Takoda promised. "The debt between Lakota and Apache is not forgotten." As the sun set over the canyon, painting the rocks in shades of gold and crimson, the two groups of warriors worked together to bury their dead and tend their wounded. It was an unprecedented sight. Plains warriors and desert fighters united in common cause. But for Ayanna and Takoda, standing together as the stars emerged in the darkening sky, The future held possibilities neither had dared imagine. The Apache girl who had found a bleeding warrior in the canyon had discovered something more precious than any healing herb. She had found a kindred spirit, a bridge between worlds that might yet stand against the storm that was coming. "Will you return to your people?" she asked as they prepared to part once more. "For now," Lakota replied, "but I will come back. The canyon holds too many memories now to abandon forever. And I will be here," Ayanna promised, "watching for the blue corn that grows in hidden places." As the Lakota warriors rode north under the star-filled sky, carrying their dead chief home for burial, Ayanna touched the bone carving at her throat and smiled. The old woman's prophecy had been fulfilled in ways none could have foreseen. She had found a warrior bleeding in the canyon. 2 nights later, the Apache girl was indeed gone, but not taken by enemies or lost to tragedy. She had been transformed by love and courage into something new, something that might yet help her people survive the trials ahead. The desert wind whispered through the canyon, carrying with it the promise of change, of new alliances forged in blood and honor. And in the hidden places where the blue corn grew, the spirits themselves seemed to smile upon the union of 2 hearts from different worlds, bound together by destiny and the eternal hope that love might yet triumph over hatred. In the years that followed, when the old storytellers spoke of the time when Apache and Lakota rode together against their common enemies, they would always begin the tale the same way. She found a Lakota warrior bleeding in the canyon, and 2 nights later, the Apache girl was gone, transformed by love into something the world had never seen before.